Hello out there. Welcome or welcome back. My name is Christina. This is the place where we gush about the films that we love and try understanding the ones that we don't. On today's agenda is the 2014 biographical drama film entitled Pawn Sacrifice. It was written by Stephen Knight and directed by Edward Zwick. It mostly follows chess player Bobby Fischer through his challenges against Soviet top grandmasters during the Cold War, with special attention paid to the match he played in 1972 against Boris Spassky.
Half the witnesses they call communists, the other half are Jews.
If you're both, you testify twice?
Go ahead, make chunks, Mr. Liberal. Your entire family was in guest in the camps.
It's all about being in the
Okay.
Так, мы сидим дома, мы в безопасности. Вы шутите? Они к вам сами придут и заберут вас. Что их остановят? На, бабы. Вы думаете, они не фашисты? Особенно нас, евреев. Они нас просто ненавидят. Бобби, it's past your bedtime. Joan? А что они сделали с Розенбергом? What car?
You told me to tell you. A red 1952 Chevy.
Прости. Bobby, remember what I told you? There are bad people out there who want to intimidate us because we represent something very threatening to them, to the status quo. You remember what that is?
Revolution?
Yes. And sometimes these bad people want to know about our work, so they spy on us. So, if someone comes up to you in the street and asks you questions about me and Mommy's friends, what do you say?
I have nothing to say to you.
That's my big boy. Joan, he's got mustard on his shirt. He's got to wear that to school tomorrow. Would you soak it for me?
Love to.
And put him to bed.
Bedtime for Bonzo.
Quick emphasis on mostly. If it isn't apparent by this opening sequence, Pawn Sacrifice is all over the place, between showcasing a myriad of behaviors that Robert exhibited that were considered problematic, a topic I will revisit, explaining how he got into chess in the first place, and revealing some family history that set a precedent for Bobby's demeanor. For fun, I'm going to add some context to the conversation we just saw Little Fisher and his mother having on screen. Robert's family was the target of FBI surveillance for about 3 decades, starting as early as 1942. Their interest began following a tip provided by a family that had considered fostering his older half-sister Joanne, so as to relieve his then single mother Regina of a financially indignant situation. This arrangement fell through, however, as the family reported the Fishers upon seeing a number of chemistry-related formulas on documents that were amongst their belongings. Any suspicions that Regina had communist ties or was a Russian spy were further aroused by the fact that she had prior experience studying medicine in Moscow, and she was previously married to a German physicist. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the report generated by the FBI did deduce that Regina had a paranoid personality, but this hardly, if at all, developed into something pathological or concerning. On the contrary, Pawn Sacrifice's key players started showing signs of psychological disturbance as early as 13. This is not indicated by Knight's screenplay at length, likely as a way of restraining his spectacle and as to not open the floor to questions regarding mitigating factors. That said, Regina did take him to a number of psychoanalysts for the purposes of intervening. However, Bobby was not known to engage in the long term with any mental health professionals, a topic I will also revisit at a later point in this video. I will only add that Carmine Negro, someone who presents as a mentor who was one of the first people to show Bobby how to play chess, is inspired by an individual in real life that had the same name. So, Pawn Sacrifice is not completely off the mark in showing audience members how he came to be so well knowledgeable about chess in general. Okay, well, at the risk of stating the obvious, chess was made popular long before this feud between Fischer and Spassky ever became a thing. In fact, it is so much in the veins of Russia that Sir Ivan the Terrible is believed to have died while playing this game in 1584. Fast forward to 1917, and chess was beyond hyped as a national pastime. This hype was far from casual, however, thanks to efforts made by Nikolai Krylenko to immobilize chess as some all-encompassing vehicle of dominance through the opening of chess schools and hosting of tournaments in his name. Chess was subsequently worshipped as an embodiment of Soviet ideals thanks to its dependency on intellectual performance, as indicated by the fact that name-droppers like Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin were regular practitioners of the game, though this trivia goes virtually unmentioned in Pawn Sacrifice. Usually such mentions might be a bit opportunist, but here, they might actually belong. Not convinced? Get this. A man by the name of Mikhail Botvinnik won the World Chess Championship on behalf of the USSR in 1948, and this started a chain of anyone representing the Soviet Union going undefeated for first place until 1991, with a very, very significant caveat. This chain of victories was only interrupted by the 4-year streak in which Bobby participated and came out on top from 1972 to 1975, with my main point being that the United States was far from the only country getting its ass kicked on this niche battlefield of wits. And this was without taking into consideration the number of technological advancements that were coming out of the USSR at the time that implicated it as a powerful entity. Over these 4 years, Bobby came to represent something so grandiose that modern audiences can't be expected to appreciate. This likely goes without saying, but this also more so applies when compared to stories involving other activities that have the appeal that chess does not, that gets taken advantage of, and for granted.
Bobby, wait. We'll go back inside and apologize. You can still play, Swell.
What are you talking about? This was it. What do you think I've been working the past 10 years of my life for? I was gonna be the youngest world champ in the history of the game. That's over now. They stole it from me, Carmine. They took it. That was today. Today!
In usual fashion, Tobey Maguire's penchant for explosive fatigue plays out as flawlessly as it should during pivotal moments. In spite of this, the unsettling focus on his character's eccentricity doesn't exactly add up with compassion or nuance. I mean, don't get me wrong, Fischer proved to be, objectively speaking, a bit of an oddball. Did he tear up hotel rooms and descend into a flavor of paranoia that gets seen on screen? Yes. Did he really make strange comments during interviews, one in which included his love for crushing his opponent's egos? Yes. In fact, Maguire's scene depicting this specifically features him being superimposed into an interview Fischer did with Dick Cavett on August 5th, 1971, like so.
And what's the moment of pleasure for you? Is it when you see the guy in trouble? Where's the greatest pleasure? What would correspond to hitting the home run in baseball?
The greatest pleasure. When you break his ego. That's where it's at.
Really?
Yeah.
And when does that occur? When he sees that he's finished?
When he sees it coming, he breaks all up inside.
Pleasure. What's the moment of pleasure for you? Is it when you see the guy in trouble? Where's the greatest pleasure? What would correspond to hitting the home run in baseball?
Oh, the greatest pleasure. Well, when you break his ego, this is where it's at.
Yeah? Yeah? Really?
Yeah.
And when does that occur? When he sees that he's finished?
Yeah, and he sees it's coming and breaks all up inside.
Yeah.
Was Fisher sensitive enough to sounds and distractions that he made requests and demands that might make him seem entitled? Yes. But there's a word for such requests in environments where this is considered more acceptable. And spoiler alert, it's accommodations. But never mind all that. Perfectly intact throughout the entirety of his life was Fisher's utmost respect for chess. He hated games or competitions where chance or randomness played a significant factor, and his gravitation towards an activity he could affect more intentionally was really second nature to him. On the topic of respect, the dynamic between Fisher and Spassky during their 1972 match played out in real life almost as cheesingly as it does in Pawn Sacrifice, though with significant caveats. For one, Fisher never walked out on or abandoned any of his games, even if he anticipated a loss. In fact, one of his games with Spassky carried into a second day, as it was customary to adjourn after 5 straight hours of playing in one given match, and the latter eventually resigned voluntarily by way of a no-show, with his personal recognition of Fisher as being a better chess player than he was. As described by Grandmaster Svetozar Gligorik, his respect for Fisher was mutual, making special note of the moment and dignity with which Spassky stood to congratulate his opponent during their 6th round. With thousands of spectators applauding Fisher's classical-style win in the 6th game, Spassky did the same. Behind the scenes, Spassky had an extensive network of support. He was accompanied during the tournament of 1972 by at least a dozen grandmasters who offered up their critiques and praise while he participated. Fisher was only accompanied by one assistant, and maybe not completely by choice. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you can disregard a lot of the celebrating that's going on behind me. Most of the people in Bobby's life never joined in on the excitement of his chess-related achievements. Quite the opposite, actually, as Regina specifically hoped that certain scenarios she orchestrated, like not allowing him to see psychoanalysts that couldn't beat him at chess if they did oblige, would curb his enthusiasm. Personally, it's of no surprise to me that later in life, Fisher started attacking elements related to his family's identity in an almost retaliative manner. And I would dare anyone to suggest that Regina being Jewish and Bobby being anti-Semitic, for example, are just wild coincidences. I did have another thought while taking all this information in, related to my comment about stories that have a broader appeal owing to the activities they involve and how visually exciting they might be. Shown here is a match that Fisher played in 1971. Close your eyes for just a few seconds and listen. What you don't hear is what chess ultimately requires of the people that play, and that is a sense of diligence that can seem so boring to the uninvested and not to mention unentertained eye. I would propose, if I may, that some of Fisher's oddities are an extreme manifestation of this quality, and that is something that should be taken into consideration. Given the fact that Fisher came to represent a much-needed halt to the USSR's chess-fueled supremacy, there is something so audacious about this theater of superiority being placed on an otherwise normal man's shoulders, with the simultaneous expectation that that same man would come out on the other side unscathed or unchanged. No doubt, Fisher was a weird man, but he was also exploitable, and I am deliberately choosing to recognize the integrity with which he played chess as something everyone can and should admire. All things considered, I'm not sure there's much I can do outside of forgiving Pawn Sacrifice for being a simplistic account. There's only so much I can expect out of a chess-related film, given how poorly they tend to be received in the court of public opinion. Nonetheless, knowing what I know now, there's an entire commode of tragedy this narrative refuses to touch, though a lot of what it implies about Fisher's life is true to an extent. After his matches with Spassky were over, Bobby turned into a self-pronounced recluse, and he faded into an obscurity that was colored by a sequence of events that turned him into a fugitive on the run from the United States. One can only imagine how much this variety of attention he received must have had an effect on his sense of temperament and routine. Not to mention his counterintuitive posturing of beliefs proved irrational, when he no doubt excelled at an activity where logic is king. Tragic still is how much his death might further reflect his tumultuous upbringing. On January 17, 2008, Bobby died from kidney failure, which started as a urinary tract infection. He refused any degree of medical intervention, citing an inability to trust any doctor that might be willing to entertain his case. He died at the age of 64. 64 being the number of squares on that board he so obviously adored and wholeheartedly committed himself to. 32 being the number of pieces any duo of people can learn to move if they want to try. 16 being the number of pieces any one person can impose their own control over. All contributing to a single life influenced by a perfect storm of pressure and prestige that was tempered by ample opportunity to support Fisher's well-being without further enabling a distinct pattern of suffering and galore. If you're still watching, thank you for being here. As always, questions, comments, and concerns are encouraged and welcome below, in addition to suggestions as to what movies I should be watching and covering next. My name's Christina, and I'll see you next time. Bye.